Diaries. I'm Tia and this is Michelle, and on our channel we share stories about how to build wealth through real estate. Be sure to subscribe, and on a weekly basis you'll hear real stories from real investors working on real deals.
And if you're looking to get started in your real estate investment journey, be sure to visit our website at doordiariesre.com, fill out the Contact Us form, and we will connect you with a real estate investment advisor in your area. So that moves on to today's topic, which is discussing the top 5 must-haves that every landlord should include in their lease agreements with their tenants.
Absolutely, that's right. So having a solid lease agreement is essential for landlords, and there are certain things that should be included to protect both the landlord as well as the tenant. And that leads me to tip number 1. So the first must-have on our list is a clear description of the property being rented and its zoning use. This should include the address of the rental property, the type of the property, and honestly, the number of bedrooms and bathrooms in that property. It's important to be as specific as possible when describing the property in your lease agreement to avoid any confusion or disputes down the line. The lease agreement should also specify any shared spaces or amenities that the tenants are entitled to use.
Absolutely. So that leads us to tip number 2. Our second must-have is to have a clear rent payment schedule. The lease should specify the due date for the rent payments and any late fees that may be charged if the rent is not paid on time. The lease should also specify the accepted payment methods for rent, whether it be check or electronic transfer or some other type of method. And if the landlord charges a security deposit, the lease should specify the amount, under what conditions the deposit should be refunded as well.
For sure. And our tip number 3, the third must-have, is to list the tenant's responsibilities. This should include expectations for maintaining the property, such as keeping it clean and tidy, and rules for behavior, such as no loud parties or smoking inside, as well as who's taking care of the landscaping, the snow removal. Whose responsibility is it to perform those duties?
Right.
And the lease should also specify any restrictions on modifications of the properties. A lot of times people want to come and they do painting and they want to hang pictures. And we want to know if there's any restrictions on that, as well as if there's restrictions on pets, such as the size, the breeds. Additionally, we want to have information on there of restriction for guests. So a lot of leases will have a restriction on how many nights a guest can actually stay. So you want to be mindful of that. And if they stay a specific amount of time, then they must be added to the lease. So overall, those are some of the must-haves that you want to have in the lease.
Absolutely. So tip number 4, the fourth must-have is to have a clear outline of the lease term. This should include the start and the end date of the lease, as well as any renewal options. It's also important to specify under conditions in which the lease can be terminated early, such as penalties if the tenant breaks the lease or if the landlord needs to make repairs to the property and breaks the lease. You may also want to discuss your policy about subletting or reassignments and short-term rentals. So having a clear understanding of the lease terms and the termination conditions can help prevent conflicts and misunderstandings.
Certainly. And tip number 5, last but not least, our 5th must-have is to include a clause outlining disputes and resolution process. This should include steps for resolving disputes between the landlord and the tenant, such as mediation or arbitration. It's also a good idea to include a clause specifying which state laws will apply in the event of a legal dispute. Having a clear dispute resolution process can help landlords and tenants avoid costly and time-consuming legal battles.
Absolutely. So I have a bonus story for the Door Diaries. So I actually had a client that owned a single family house in the suburbs, and he had leased it to a couple of young guys that lived in there, and they had a band. And so they had instruments and stuff like that, and they signed the lease. And of course, the landlord didn't have any problems with them practicing their instruments in the basement. Well, it turns out they actually converted the house and was hosting concerts in the basement. So they completely converted it to a concert venue. So they were
paid concerts.
Paid concerts. So they were charging a cover at the door to get in, and then they would go into the basement and have these concerts and party it out and rock it out in the basement. So as you can imagine, it caused a ruckus in the neighborhood, and the neighbors were pretty upset about it. So of course, he got a ton of complaints, violations from the city concerning the noise and the amount of traffic that was going in and out of there, but he didn't specify the use in the lease. And so it did take him like a few months to get them evicted out of there. be over that. And so, of course, he had to get him out of there, and then he had to go in there, and of course, the place was trashed from all the partying and the traffic that was going in and out of there. So you definitely want to make sure that you specify, the use and be specific. Like, hey, this is only residential use. You can't run a business. You can't run a concert venue or any other, use that is not permitted by the landlord. So be sure to include that in your lease.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much for sticking with us to the end. And as a bonus tip, we recommend that landlords conduct a thorough background check on potential tenants before signing a lease agreement. Be sure to reference our earlier video on top 5 things to look for when finding a good tenant. And that link is below in the comments. And this can include running a credit check, verifying employment and income, as well as checking references from previous landlords. Taking the time to thoroughly vet potential tenants can help landlords avoid renting to tenants who may be unreliable or have a history of damaging properties, or in Michelle's case, having concerts in the basement.
Right, exactly. And bonus tip number 2 is to consider purchasing a lease template from a local attorney in your area that specializes in eviction law and landlord representation. Local landlord laws change frequently, so to ensure your lease is up to date and give you a higher level of protection should you have to evict a tenant, it never hurts to actually just purchase a template from an attorney.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you found these tips helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to hear more stories from real investors working on real deals.
See you next time.